And thank you, Dr. Teli, for the nice introduction. Today I will be speaking on enzymes in denim processing, but also knowing that a lot of processing is not done in this area. I will be more focusing on how enzymes work, what are enzymes and how they work on fabric, on cotton fabric. So fashion changes are dramatic and frequent. So you can know this denim fabric, which was actually many years ago used by workmen in the US. This has now come into our wardrobes. So you can see how fashion travels, from a workforce clothing, because it was very rugged, then used very tough fabric, which would not, what we can say, which could withstand all the hard working conditions. This same fabric now has become a fashion trend all over the world. And denim washing is all about branding, basically. If you see most of the denim brands like Levi's or Wrangler or Leros, etc., these are big brands that we have in denim. And the fashion trend in denim is also cyclical. Just like many other fashion clothes that are cyclical, sometimes we have bell bottoms and then they go out of fashion. Again, you come to yeah. So denim washing and denim finishing is all about brands also. So in the initial years, denim was finished, or denim was washed with pumice stones. Pumice stone is a type of stone which comes from from lava, basically, and this is a very light stone, and it has an abrasion effect on denim. So what they used to do is they used to add the denim fabric along with the pumice stone into the drum washer, and they would wash this garment. And what would happen is the surface of the denim would get abraded because of the friction between the stone and the garment. But there was a problem. With pumice stone, what happens is, I hope everybody knows pumice stone, even we use pumice stone for brushing our feet, etc., removing dead skin, etc. So this pumice stone, what used to happen is, because of the friction, you used to have a very small powder which is happen in the machinery. And this powder then would go into the seams, it would go into the collars, etc. It would have problems with the effluent because you have to get rid of this powder. And also, the pumice stone would damage the machines, So the machines would get damaged because the stones are abrading the machines all the time. So because of these problems, everybody was looking for a solution, or for an alternate solution to these pumice stones. And then came the idea of enzymes. Now, just before we understand how denim has been washed, or how do you get that faded look on denim, I would like to give you a small idea of how denim is dyed, basically. Now, the denim fabric itself is a 3-up, 1-down weave, where we have the indigo, the indigo dyed yarn, which comes on the surface, and the undyed yarn is on the back face, okay, or on the other side. Now, the indigo is a dye, actually, from the VAT class of dyes, and this dye is actually a pigment. So you have to first make it soluble in water and make it into a leucoform, and then put it on the fabric and then oxidize it. So you reduce it first and then you oxidize it. So when you put it on the fabric, it becomes like a pigment. I am sure everybody knows what is pigment here. On the fabric, you do pigment dyeing. Now, the very fact that denim needs to be faded, it means the dyeing does not need to be fast. If the dyeing is fast, you cannot fade it easily. So they want the dyeing to be a ring dyeing. So you can see a cross section of the cotton fiber that has been dyed here, and you will see that the indigo has been built up on the surface of the cotton. That means we do not allow the indigo to penetrate the fiber. Generally, this indigo is dyed in two forms. One is the rope form. We call it rope, or the yarn form. A number of yarn together, we call it a rope form, or it is a sheet of yarn. It is dyed in these two ways. And you can see why the denim is not fast. What happens is, the yarn goes into the leucoform, that is the dissolved state there down, and then the yarn comes out into the air. As soon as it is aired, the indigo gets oxidized, and it will form a pigment, and it will come on the surface of the fabric. So when it comes on the surface of the yarn, it has like 5, 6, 7 stages by which the indigo is built up. You can see at the bottom there, the fiber cross section on the first dip, on the second dip, on the third dip, and you have 7 dips. At the 7th dip, you can see that the indigo builds up on the surface of the yarn. But the indigo dye itself does not have a bonding with a great bonding with the cotton. And that is why we are able to wash off the indigo at a later stage when you are, or rub off the indigo basically at a later stage. So you can see again various passages. You can see in the first passage, when I say passage means in the first trough here. So in the first trough you see a light indigo, then the second passage, in the 4 passages, in 6 passages you will find that the indigo keeps on building up. And that is a scanning electron microscope diagram of a cross section of yarn dyed with indigo. You can see that the indigo dye has deposited on the surface there of cotton. So we discussed pumic stones, and these pumic stones were harmful. There were problems there, and then came the idea of enzymes. Now I do not know if any of you know what are enzymes. Anybody here who knows enzymes? Anybody from the processing here, or mostly from garmenting? You are from processing, so you would know what are enzymes. Now enzymes, are actually protein molecules basically. When I started this business of enzymes, we started manufacturing in 2001. Then we had a distribution network, and in the distribution network we had some distributors who were like giants basically. So when we said that now we are introducing enzymes into the product range, they said no, we would not like to do business with enzymes because they are like living organisms. They are ketanu. We don't want to do any work with ketanus. We don't want to sell them. And then we had to call them and explain to them that enzymes are not living organisms actually. So they are products of living organisms. So there is a misconception among not only the garment fraternity or the fabric fraternity, but also processing fraternity. They think that the enzymes are living organisms. So they are not living organisms. They are protein molecules. They are large size of protein molecules. We call them the globular protein molecules. Now, these enzymes are very specific. That is the importance of the enzymes in the textile industry, and that is why it was brought into the textile industry. Now, what do you mean by specific? That means a particular enzyme will affect a particular substrate only. That means if you have to affect cotton, then you need a cellulase enzyme. If you have to affect starch, that means if you have to remove starch, then you need an amylase enzyme. If you need to remove protein, then you need a protease enzyme. If you need to remove pectin, then you need a pectinase kind of enzyme. So these enzymes are very specific to the substrate. And this idea of specificity was, with this idea of specificity, we were able to apply these enzymes at various stages in processing of fabric, basically. And of course, enzymes are microorganisms, produced by microorganisms, therefore they are natural products or biochemicals, we can say, and therefore they are biodegradable as well. Now, what do these enzymes do actually, and how do they work? Now, this enzyme is also called a biocatalyst. So, the enzyme actually plays the role of a catalyst. It does not take part, it does not get consumed in the reaction, and therefore these enzymes can be reused again if required. They actually reduce the activation energy of the reaction. Like for example, take human beings. Now we eat a lot of carbohydrates, we eat starch, we eat protein. Now our body also produces these enzymes. That means it produces the proteases, it produces the amylases in our body, and because of which the body can digest food. But imagine a body without enzymes. So if you eat protein, to digest that protein, probably you require 100 degrees centigrade of cooking and things like that. So the body temperature, instead of being 91 degrees or 98 degrees Fahrenheit, would have been 200 degrees Fahrenheit. So you can imagine a body without enzymes. So because of the enzymes, our body is able to be at that temperature, because the enzymes can do the reactions at much lower temperature and at a multifold speed. That means the speed or the rate of reaction is increased considerably by the enzyme. A small idea of how the enzymes are produced. If you see here at the extreme left, there is a vial basically. There is a test tube in which there is that kida that we call, or a microorganism. The microorganism could be a bacteria, could be a fungus, could be a yeast, or could be a virus basically. So that from the small vial of the enzyme or the slant that we call, we take out part of that microorganism and we will inoculate in a agar medium or in a medium where the enzyme, where the microorganism can grow. So the microorganism grows over there and then it is transferred to a what we can say initial seed fermenter, and from the seed fermenter it goes into the main fermenter. So you can imagine that a small few what you can say micrograms of enzyme, the microorganism will can grow into 500,000 liters of fermented broth basically. So that's how the enzyme is produced. So exactly what happens is the microorganisms are fed something to be eaten to grow. For example, suppose we have a fungus which is Aspergillus niger. Now this fungus, if I feed it with cellulose, then when the fungus detects cellulose, it needs to eat something. So when it needs to eat something, it cannot eat the cellulose by itself, as it is. So what it does, it produces a cellulase enzyme. It produces an enzyme which can break down the cellulose. So it goes on producing the cellulase enzyme for 6-7 days, and when it reaches peak activity, then we harvest that product from there. Basically, that is the idea. So the same microorganism, if I feed it with starch, then it will detect starch and it will produce another enzyme which can break down starch, because finally these enzymes will break down these materials into glucose, and that glucose can be consumed by the microorganism. And in the media, it is not only the starch or the cellulose that is put in. In the media, just like human beings, they need vitamins, they need minerals, they need protein. So certain other small items in small quantity are also added into the fermenter so that the microorganisms can grow faster and they can produce more amount of enzyme. Now there are various types of enzymes. I will not go into the detail of this because most of the enzymes are for pharmaceutical and food application. But the enzymes that are useful for textiles are the hydrolases. The hydrolases means it's like a scissor kind of a mechanism. These enzymes break the chain. Whatever chain we have of the amylase or of the cellulose, this chain is broken by the hydrolases. And another type of enzyme that works here is the oxidoreductase. And that enzyme, we call it as the lacase basically. And these lacases are useful to bleach denim basically, because we will come to those lacases a little later. So as I said that the enzymes are very specific, and to explain the working of the enzyme, it is a lock and key mechanism. And if you see here the illustration that is shown, the enzyme is shown as a bigger, larger molecule. As I told you, enzyme is a large protein molecule basically, and the substrate, when you go on a molecular level, the substrate is smaller than the enzyme. The substrate and the enzyme, they will then lock together. So a particular substrate is the key and the enzyme is the lock. They have to fit. Only if it fits, only then the enzyme can work. So for example, in textile processing, we do a desizing of the fabric, and then we do a fading of the fabric. We do bioscoring of the fabric. Now if you want to do desizing, what we used to do earlier, we used to add HCl, we used to add sulfuric acid. Now the sulfuric acid will not only remove the size, but also damage the cellulose basically. It will also damage the substrate. And then the scientists thought about the amylase. So when the amylase is put into the cotton, it will only attack the starch. So there will be no damage to the cellulose. And similarly, all other enzymes are used only for specific purposes. So you can see you have the substrate plus enzyme, then the enzyme substrate complex happens, then again the enzyme separates, and we have products which are the breakdown products from the substrate. Now the enzyme structure I won't go into, but there are various kinds of bonding there. Why the structure is shown here is because the enzyme is a globular protein basically. So if any substance which is not compatible with the enzyme is put along with the enzyme, then the enzyme will denature. So the types of products which are not compatible are cationic agents, anionic agents, certain heavy metals, etc. When you add along with the enzymes, they are not compatible. Similarly, temperature and pH. These things have to be perfect for the enzyme. Only then the enzyme works nicely. So in processing, you look at amylases. These amylases are used for the desizing of starch. You have the size composition of the fabric. We have the natural sizing agents and the synthetic sizing agents. So here also a note has to be made that the enzyme will work only on starches. It will not work on other compositions. But what happens is when the composition is a combination of many things and you degrade one part of it, then the other part can be easily washed off. For example, if you have a starch and polyvinyl alcohol combination, the enzyme will degrade the starch, and the polyvinyl alcohol, what you can say, addition will also be broken down, and you can remove the polyvinyl alcohol also. So you can see starch contains of amylose and amylopectins. The enzyme only attacks the amylose basically. They do not recognize the amylopectins. These are some structures here. Now, how enzymatic desizing happens? If you look here, we have these two types of enzymes. One is the conventional low temperature enzymes. That means the desizing can happen at lower temperatures, maybe at room temperature cold or 40 degrees centigrade. And the others are the thermostable enzymes, where the enzymes work at higher temperature. That means the enzymes are stable even at 85 degrees centigrade or even at 110 degrees centigrade. If you know, production of glucose is basically made from starch. So when starch is degraded by the enzyme at higher temperatures of 110 degrees centigrade, the starch degrades into glucose, and that's how glucose is manufactured. So the mechanism of desizing is not only the enzyme attack, because as I said, the enzyme is a very large molecule. So if the enzyme cannot reach the substrate, it will not work. So and therefore we need these steps before desizing happens. So the first step is wetting and pH buffering. So when you say wetting, that means the substrate or the fabric needs to be wetted. Only then after the wetting happens, the size needs to be swollen. That means you have to have swelling of the size. The size gelatinizes, and only then the enzyme can attack. See, I get many complaints. Okay, your enzyme does not work. But the first three steps are not given any weightage by the processor, and therefore we have these complaints. So first three steps are important, and even the last step is important in desizing. Why the last step is important? Because when you desize the fabric, there is not enough time that we give in the desizing operation for the starch to be converted into sugar. I mean, if I keep it there for 48 hours, probably the starch will convert into sugar and it can be washed off. All that happens is the long chain of the starch is randomly cut by the enzymes, and therefore the solubility of the starch improves. And there the fifth step is very important, that after the enzyme attack happens, we need to have proper removal of the starch from the fabric. Why proper removal of starch from the fabric? Because the test for desizing is with iodine basically. So even if you remove the starch, or even if you degrade the starch from the fabric, the starch, if it is not removed from the fabric, it will still affect your dyeing. And therefore the wash off operation and the dispersion of the degradation products are very important. And then starch hydrolysis, this is too technical, so we'll not go into there. Now what happens is the desizing helps to soften the garments, and it also helps you to prevent any crack marks or what you can say lining on the fabric, and it also prepares the garment for subsequent processing. The next step, the next segment of enzymes is the cellulase enzymes, that is fading. So all of us wear denim, and really we don't know how to buy a good quality of denim, or how to buy what is a good quality of denim. So I will go through the mechanism of cellulase fading because of cellulase enzyme, and then you will know at the end of it is how you can buy a good pair of jeans basically. Now again the same for the denim look. What happens is that the surface of the yarn is abraded. Now what happens, how the mechanism here is that the indigo is trapped by the cotton actually. The indigo has some weak bonding with the cotton, and it is physically trapped in the cotton. Now the enzyme, which is a cellulase, it attacks the cellulose. So what happens is the molecules which are trapped by the cellulose, these cellulose gets weak, and therefore the indigo escapes. If you see the next slide, it very clearly explains. So you can see here that the cotton fibrils are holding the indigo onto the cotton basically. Those fibrils are holding the cotton onto the fiber. Because the fibrils become weak because of the attack of the enzyme, the indigo molecules are released, and therefore the weave of denim is such that you have the blue denim, blue thing on the surface. Basically the if you see the previous slide, the cross section inside of the cotton is white, and outside of the cotton is blue. So when the blue indigo is removed from the surface, what is exposed is the white portion of the cotton, and that is why you get the salt pepper effect, or you get the high-low effect in the denim when you do a fading. If you just do a bleaching, it will happen evenly. So we don't want an even effect. You want a salt pepper or a high-low effect with the denim. Now the cellulose enzyme itself has is the structure, or if schematically if you want to show what is a cellulose enzyme, you can see there are three parts in the cellulose enzyme. One is the active site, which degrades the substrate. The other part is the hinge, and the third part is called the cellulose binding domain, or the third part, the end tail. The tail actually attaches to the cellulose and it acts on the cellulose. So you can see here there are different types of cellulose enzymes. They are endoglucanases, they are cellobiohydrolases, and they are beta glucosidases. Each of them have different effect on cellulose. So you can see here that the endoglucanases, they randomly cut the cellulose chains, and the exoglucanases or the exocellulases, they cut the side chains basically from the side. So, and the beta glucosidases are responsible for the formation of glucose, or for the manufacture of glucose. So when you want to manufacture glucose, you need to have a beta glucosidase rich enzyme. If you want to have a fading effect basically, then you need a exocellulase. That means you need to cut the sides of the chain. And when you want to do a biopolish, suppose you want to I have not taken biopolish, maybe my colleague will take a biopolish. That means when you want to remove the surface hair, then you do a endoglucanase. The idea of endoglucanase is when there is a large, if you have a long rope with you, then if you cut the rope randomly, then the strength of the rope is gone basically. So that's what the endoglucanase does. It cuts the length of cellulose randomly, and when it cuts it randomly, the strength of cellulose is lost, and then you get the fading type, or you get the abrasion on the cotton. In the cellulases itself, there are three different types. The first one we call as the acid cellulase or the whole cellulases. In this case, we have all the activities of cellulase in there in the whole cellulase, and these cellulases, acid cellulases, work at a pH of 4.5 to 4.8 or 4.5 to 5, but they are very aggressive. But the cast that you get is a blue cast because it leaves a lot of staining on the white portion of the denim. Then we have neutral cellulases. These are cellulases where the cellulose binding domain is knocked off. Basically, there is a less cellulose binding domain. So these products work under neutral conditions, and the staining is much less, and the cast is very nice. You know, the cast is grayer and better. And finally, we have the engineered cellulases, or what we call as genetically modified organisms, where the pH stability as well as the temperature stability is a little bit wider in the case of engineered cellulases. So they will work at about between 5 and 6 pH or 5 to 6.5 pH, and the temperature region can be from 40 to 55 degrees centigrade. Recently, we also have all these enzymes generally work at 55 degrees centigrade or 60 degrees centigrade. Now there are enzymes which are called cold enzymes, that is, they work at 30 degrees centigrade. The idea is when you have cold enzymes, you save on energy, and the backstaining is much less when you do a cold fading with these enzymes. So you can see a comparison here. What we have done is we have reversed the fabric. So if it is an acid cellulase, then you will see the reverse of the fabric is quite blue in color. If you see an engineered cellulase, it is between the neutral and the acid. The neutral cellulase, the back of the denim garment is pretty clean or pretty white. So whenever you go to buy a denim, you must check the reverse of the denim. So when you check the reverse of the denim, if the reverse of the denim is nice and bright without a blue tint, then that denim is a good wash. That means that wash of the denim is a good wash. You also should see the pocketing of the denim. So if you see the pocketing of the denim, you will find that the pockets of the denim are stained. That means blue stain. So if there is blue stain on the pocket of the denim, means it is a poor wash, or it is a wash with an acid enzyme, which is a cheaper enzyme, which is very aggressive. It also damages the fabric to a larger extent. So when you buy a denim next time, you must look at the high-low. That means the white to the blue portion should be nice, contrast should be very high, and there should be no staining either on the pocketing or on the reverse of the denim. So then you know that this is a good quality denim. So whenever you buy denim, this is a good tip for you to buy denim. Then we have biopreparation of cotton actually, which is a little bit away from denim processing. Now, Originally cotton was processed with sodium hydroxide. That means you do the scouring with this harsh sodium hydroxide for scouring the cotton to remove the waxes, saponify the waxes and remove them from the cotton and make cotton absorbent. Again, from the environment point of view, a particular enzyme was developed for bioscouring. It is basically predominantly based on pectinase basically. This is because the cotton fiber or the cellulose in cotton is bound by pectins basically. And if you remove these pectins, then you are able to release the waxes or the other impurities that are there in cotton, and these waxes and impurities are then emulsified by certain surfactants. So your cotton becomes absorbent, but then you are not using any harsh chemicals there. That means you are not using sodium hydroxide. So when you are not using sodium hydroxide, the effluent load considerably decreases. Sodium hydroxide also has an effect on later dyeing. Basically, if you don't neutralize sodium hydroxide from the dyeing, then from the fabric, then you have problems in reactive dyings and other kinds of dyings. Another kind of enzyme is called the hydrogen peroxide killers. This is supposed to be one of the fastest acting enzymes and the most concentrated type of enzymes. We all know that bleaching of cotton takes place with hydrogen peroxide, and to remove hydrogen peroxide from the fabric for subsequent dyeing, we need to actually use a reducing agent. Generally, a reducing agent is used like say sodium metabisulfite or something like that. Now, one cannot very accurately judge how much hydrogen peroxide is left on the fabric and therefore how much amount of reducing agent to add onto the fabric to neutralize the hydrogen peroxide. So what happens is either there is excess of reducing agent or some amount of hydrogen peroxide remains in the bath, because of which you have problem in the subsequent dyeing stages. And here again, the specificity of the enzyme has been taken into consideration. Here the hydrogen peroxide enzyme, which is called a catalase, this attacks only hydrogen peroxide, and therefore even if it is excess in the bath, you have no problem, but your hydrogen peroxide is completely finished. And because of this, with the help of this catalase, you can save many washings also. So for example, you neutralize hydrogen peroxide with sodium bisulfite, and then you give 2 washes to remove the sodium bisulfite from the system, and that has a load on the utility. Whereas in this case, you just neutralize with the catalase, and in the same bath you can start your dyeing, because there is no need to remove the catalase from the system. The catalase does not affect the dyeing, it will not affect the cellulose, or it will not affect any other dye stuff also. So that is the big advantage of the catalase. So they are also called peroxide killers in the industry. In processing, we call them as peroxide killers. The enzymatic modification of polyester is under research actually at the present moment. It's under R&D, but there are many polyesterases and lipases which work on the surface of polyester and help to remove the or polish the surface of polyester, or rather etch the surface of polyester. Now, if this product comes in, then it will be a great boon to environment. In Surat we have about 400 processing units, and each processing unit would process say about 10 tons of fabric, or 5 to 10 tons of fabric. Now, to give the fabric a particular drape and a particular feel, what the Surat guys do is that they do a weight reduction of the polyester. So they use almost 10% of caustic to remove 20% of weight of the polyester, so that you get a good drape on your sari, or you get a good feel on the sari. But none of them have good effluent treatment plants. So you can imagine if they do 10 tons per day, and if they use 10% of caustic soda, that means 1 ton of caustic soda is drained into the environment, and which is with 400 units, we have 400 tons of caustic soda being drained. If not 400, maybe 100 tons of caustic soda being drained. And that is a big load on the environment. And I think that if this kind of enzyme becomes economically viable, it is working now, but it is not economically viable at the present moment. But once it becomes economically viable, I think it will be a very environment friendly process. We also have enzymes for the modification of wool fiber. Basically, wool is a protein fiber. So use of proteases on wool can help you to make the wool soft. Basically, wool can become soft. Wool also has a surface. Basically, they have these surface scales. Now, these surface scales are in a certain form. Basically, you can see the biosoftened resin that is used there. You can see the wool scales. So the wool scales, when they go in water, they shrink, and therefore they have to be bound. Now, earlier it was done with the help of certain resins, But if you use the protein enzyme, proteases, then it can remove some of the scales, and therefore the sliding of the scales don't take place, and the wool becomes shrink resistant actually. So it's a very nice process because it is more eco-friendly. Earlier for this chlorine was used also to help anti-shrink properties of wool. Now you don't need that. Also there is carbonization. You know, when wool is harvested from the back of the sheep, a lot of cellulose comes along with it. A lot of dirt and vegetable matter comes with it. So people used to use sulfuric acid for removing the cellulose matter. Now you can use the cellulases for this operation. The retting of flax, linen also can be done enzymatically. Here we use xylonases basically and lignases. You also have degumming of silk. Actually silk, when it is degummed, we use what you can say soda ash and surfactant to degum the silk. And silk has two types of gum, or it is fibrine and the sericin. So the sericin has to be removed by soda ash or by an alkali treatment. But because the soda ash cannot know the difference between sericin and fibrine, that is the main wool fiber, it destroys the fibrine also. That means in addition to removing the sericin, it will also destroy the fibrine, and therefore the silk becomes weaker. So if there is some mistake, if there is an overdose of soda ash, then what happens is your silk gets damaged. So in this case, there are certain pepsin and trypsin which are proteolytic enzymes. These enzymes can recognize only sericin. That means they only attack sericin, and therefore you get perfect weight reduction. You never have a quality problem, and the softening of the silk also becomes excellent here. So you can see here that you have this silk which has been treated with enzyme, and there is no damage to the silk. You can see the first part of the slide, and in the lower portion you can see that the silk fibrine also has been damaged when you do it by chemical process. Now when we come to the denim, we have this problem of backstaining, as I told you just now. When the enzyme is worked on the indigo is released from the fabric, and the indigo gets redeposited on the fabric surface. And when the indigo gets redeposited, it is a big headache. That means the quality of the fabric reduces considerably. And therefore, there is introduction of these anti-backstaining agents. These anti-backstaining agents actually help to disperse the indigo, or not allow the indigo to redeposit on the fabric, and also they help to coagulate the indigo dye, so that they will not go in a fine dispersion on the fabric surface. So as I've already mentioned, that acid cellulases, they have high cellulose binding domains, and therefore the backstaining is very high. When I say the high cellulose binding domains, means the enzyme itself is attached to the cellulose. When it is attached to the cellulose, and it is also working on the cellulose. So when it is working on the cellulose, the enzyme is attached, it is working on the cellulose, and the cellulose has the indigo with it. So the enzyme attached with the indigo on the fabric surface. In the modified celluloses, the CBDs are reduced, and therefore the backstaining is less. In the neutral cellulases, there are no CBDs, and therefore the backstaining is much less. So you can see here, like if you don't use a backstaining agent, then you will get this kind of a color, that the blue color on the white fabric will be like this. If you use conventional backstaining agents, and we have a very special backstaining agent which is called green power ZBS, this also forms a complex with the dye, and therefore does not allow it to redeposit. So the whiteness of the fabric will be much better there. Even after using backstaining agents, you still find that there is some stain on the fabric, and this can be done. This can be cleansed by a backstain cleanup, basically, or you can remove it by a backstain cleanup. And these backstain cleanups are nothing but proteases, because as I said in the beginning, enzymes are protein molecules. Now these protein molecules are stuck to the cellulose. Along with the protein molecules, you have the indigo which is stuck to the cellulose. So if you destroy the protein molecules, that is, if you destroy the cellulose enzyme itself with the help of a protease enzyme, then you get a backstain cleanup. So there are you can do it in 3 stages. You select the right type of enzyme. That means you select a neutral cellulase. When you select a neutral cellulase, your backstaining will be much less. Along with the neutral cellulase, you add an anti-backstaining agent, and which will prevent backstain to a large extent. And still, if you don't get proper results, then you use the backstain cleanup agent. Now, you can do backstain cleanup by using a bleaching agent or a harsh washing off, but then that will affect the shade. It will remove more indigo from the system, and therefore it will affect the shade. So you need something which will not affect the shade. So the proteases will attack only the indigo there, or the cellulose enzyme there, and the backstain can be cleaned up. You can see a comparison here. We have the acid enzyme, we have the engineered enzyme, and the neutral enzyme. once again, and you can see the pocketing material here. Again, the pocketing material for an acid enzyme, engineered enzyme, and the neutral enzyme will be different. So we must, whenever we go to a shop, probably if it is more stained or if the salt pepper effect is not good, we can pay less for the product. I think we'll remove this. Then we come to lacases. Lacases are enzymes which are specific to indigo. That means they bleach only indigo. Now, this is an important enzyme which has been introduced, and it is becoming more and more viable now, or economically viable, because normally sodium hypochlorite is used for bleaching, which is actually banned in the fabric industry. That means in the fabric you cannot use sodium hypochlorite. Whereas in denim, everybody still uses hypochlorite. So this is a big irony, basically. If you see the irony of the Western world, because they don't have a proper bleaching agent for indigo, or because they don't want to spend more money on lacases, what they will say is, okay, for denim bleaching is okay, but for fabric bleaching is not okay. So this is the kind of irony the Western world uses. But still, lacase is a oxidoreductase. I'll not go too much into the structure. There is a reduction oxidization which takes place here, and the indigo is reduced to acetine. From acetine it becomes acetic acid, and finally the anthranoic acid. So that's how the lacase enzyme works. The beauty is that if the lacase enzyme works only on indigo, so if you have a denim which is over-dyed with some other color and which has also sulfur black in it, then you will wash down only indigo, and all the other colors can give you good fashionable looks, basically. So you can see for bio-bleaching of denims, earlier alkali and heat were used for desizing. Now we have the enzymes. Earlier for abrasion, pumic stones were used. Now we have the cellulases. And earlier for bleaching, hypochlorite was used. And now you can do a lacase treatment. Our brand for lacase is the Enzolite A and Enzolite B. Again, because of the chlorine bleach ban all over the world, there is another method of bleaching which has been introduced, and which is called ozone bleaching, basically. And this ozone bleaching have specific machines where you have an ozone generator, and the ozone generator pumps in ozone into the system, and this ozone helps to bleach indigo very nicely. So this is a very eco-friendly process, and it is catching up in the Western world. At present, the cost of the machines are very high, but I think in the near future this will be introduced if you have very efficient ozone producing, efficient as well as what you can say safe ozone producing, because ozone is another dangerous chemical, and ozone has a problem of what you can say making holes into our atmosphere from where the UV radiation will come in. So we need to have safe machinery that produces ozone. So what are the issues in denim processing? You will find that the abrasion cycles are too long. That means you have to use the enzyme for a longer period of time. You have high backstaining. Remember, cellulases damage cellulose, basically. They damage the fiber, because of which the abrasion takes place. Now, if you leave the enzyme onto the fabric for a longer period of time, or you do not deactivate the enzyme, then there is a danger of degradation, basically, of the fiber. For example, if you take a denim pant and you put it in a bucket with a cellulose enzyme, leave it there for 48 hours, at the end of the day, the denim fabric will be completely degraded by that. So you have to be careful there. And the cast, certain brands, they require a blue cast, certain brands require a gray cast, etc. The lacase enzyme gives you a gray cast. The bleaching or the hypochlorite bleach gives you a bluer cast, basically. And waste effluent also are processes here. So the benefits of lacase are, again, as I told you, they are very specific to indigo. They do not attack the cellulose. The chlorine that you use, they attack the cellulose also. That means when you do a chlorine bleaching, it will damage your fabric. The lacase will not damage your fabric. It gives you a gray cast. That's a very high-end look, basically the cast of this, and it's a clean technology, basically. Now coming to generalized denim processing. The denim is first, there is a system where they break the denim, because the denim is a hard fabric. So they do a breaking of the denim and the reversing of the denim. Then you could do sandblasting, then you could do desizing, fading, after washing, bleaching, over-dyeing, tinting, biopolishing, and softening. These are the various stages through which a denim process goes through. So we've discussed up to bleaching, basically. Over-dyeing, tinting is all our dyeing processes, and biopolishing is similar to fading, but because the same kind of enzyme is used there, again the mechanism is the same, that the fiber is degraded, and because of the degradation of the fiber, there is an aberration between fiber to fiber or fabric to fabric and fabric to machine, because of which the surface hair is removed. So biopolishing also, there is a joke on biopolishing. You know, when we work with our executives, so we ask them how biopolishing takes place. You know, how the hair in the denim fabric is removed by the enzyme. So that fellow will say that the hair is attacked by the enzyme, and therefore it goes and cuts the enzyme. And then we always say that that means the enzyme is intelligent. It can first identify the hair and go and cut it. So then he's a little bit shocked. Then he thinks, yes, enzyme cannot be that intelligent to just go and remove the surface hair. So then the mechanism is explained to them that the enzyme actually reduces the strength of the cellulose. When it reduces the strength of the cellulose, then because of abrasion, the surface hair is removed. So the biopolishing technique is not that the enzyme goes and intelligently attacks only the hair that is removing, because it will recognize the entire cellulose. It is not going to only recognize the hair which is standing in the cellulose or the smaller fibrils. So that we always pull the leg of a new guy who comes into our organization, you know, that kind of a thing. So I think this we have discussed. So the undesired effects in these are crease marks. In denims we get a lot of crease marks. We get backstaining and strength loss. So in fading you get strength loss, as well as you get what you can say different casts. So all those things are undesired backstaining, undesired effects. But because it also degrades the cellulose becomes permanently soft. That means without a softener also, the denim pants mostly, if you see, they're pretty soft, even though the fabric is a very thick fabric. You know, it's a very like canvas fabric. But you find the flow of the denim is very good. That is because of the enzyme. The different effects you can see, we call the basic blue, we call the mill rinse wash, we call the stone wash, moon wash.
Can I ask this, sorry to interrupt, organizers, if you could just see that some chairs are put, because many friends want to sit here but there are no enough chairs. Please sit.
Yeah. So these are the different types of effects that you can get on denim. The stone wash, the different moon wash, bleach, white bleach, over dye, etc. I'll just run through this because most of the processors know these washes. We call the enzyme wash. That means they will do the desizing, they will do the fading, and then the softening. So this is a three-step method. Then we have the over dyeing, where you do the desizing, bleaching, over dyeing with the help of sulfur, and then softening. Then we have the monkey wash. Monkey wash is nothing but at the end of it we do a tinting with a reactive dye or some other dye. So you get a tint effect on the fabric. Then we have an acid wash. The acid wash is actually a what you can say spray with potassium permanganate. Potassium permanganate also oxidizes the denim or the indigo. So you will get that spray effect. You know, you can see on this jacket there is a spray effect on both sides of the jacket. That is called an acid wash. Then we have the ice wash, where ice wash means actually bleaching. Basically you bleach it with sodium hypochlorite. And we have the hard wash. That means in the hard wash we have fading, proper fading with enzyme. That is called the hard wash. And this is for ecru. So wherever ecru means which is undyed, it is not a denim fabric, it is a mill fabric which comes in grey form. So you have to do all the processes there. So you have to do a one bath desizing, scouring, bleaching, then do a sulfur dyeing of that, and then you do a fading of that after doing a sulfur dyeing. There is another concept that has been introduced which is similar to boostins. You know, the pumic stone are large stones which are bigger size stones, and therefore they damage the machine and they damage the fabric also. So this boostins is based on a nano kind of brushes. Basically they are nano kind of minerals where you use very few grams of those minerals in the system, and that will give you a better aberration. Basically, instead of using a large amount of pumic stones, you know, you have to use 1:1. If you use 100 kilos of fabric, you have to use 100 kilos of pumic stone for the effect. Whereas in this case, if you use 100 kilos of fabric, you may have to use 100 grams of the nano minerals. These nano minerals have very high surface area. Pumic stones don't have very high surface area. So 1 gram of nano mineral can have, say, 800 square meter of surface area. And therefore, this is a new idea which is being introduced to improve the abrasion of the fabric. There is another problem in denim, that is when denim is exposed in the showrooms, then you will find that there are some yellow marks on the denim, you know, at the folds basically. So actually that is because of the ozone. most of these lights, which are sodium vapor lights or the lights which focus, which they keep for focusing on these show places, these lights, they produce ozone, and ozone has a bleaching effect on denim. We just saw that we can do also bleaching with ozone. So this ozone bleaches the denim. So we have to put a finish on the fabric which is called anti-ozone finish, basically. So ozone is produced in the upper layers there. There is a layer of ozone there, and the ozone also works in the same way. It breaks it down to acetane, acetic acid, and anthranilic acid. And this is not very clear here, but the middle fabric is actually yellowish. If you look at the middle fabric, you will find yellow streaks on the middle fabric whenever it is exposed to light, basically where the production of ozone takes place. So an anti-ozone finish is a must if you want to have the blue look on the denim. Otherwise, the denim will fade into a slightly yellowish look. Then we have finishes like this temper PCA, which is permanent wrinkle. All of you know what is wrinkle, but this is actually a resin. So this resin helps to keep the denim in a particular form, and these are washed fast. That means the wrinkles can be washed fast for 10 to 15 washes. So you form permanent wrinkles or whiskers. They are durable, and they give a new fashion look to the fabric. It has become very common in the last 2 years. Now the fashion trend has decreased a bit with the wrinkle, because these resin finishes are based on formaldehyde, and there is a ban on formaldehyde worldwide. Now on denim also it has come. So again, an irony in the Western world. For so many years, wrinkle finish or the whisker finish was allowed in the Western world with resins. But nowadays, some of them are saying that no resin at all. So that's what is happening now. So till it is suitable to them, they allow it, and when it is not suitable to them, they say, okay, no, not anymore. And finally, there is one finish on denim which we call as a glaze finish. That is with a polyurethane, basically. The Ultra Bounce RPUR is a polyurethane. You can see there is a glaze surface there. So denim gets a leather kind of look or a glazed kind of look. For other kinds of finishes, my colleague will take over. So thank you very much for your kind attention.